FPL is finally back this weekend in the shape of Game Week 8, and in today's video we are going to be taking a look at my updated transfer plans with the recent injury news to Bukayo Saka, and of course we need to talk about whether to sell Ollie Watkins in those FPL teams. So as always, look forward to today's video. Make sure to drop a like, aiming for 400 on this video, and of course if you haven't already, make sure you do subscribe to the channel for daily fantasy content. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So Game Week 7 feels a lifetime ago, but a quick recap on how I got on: 52 points and a small green arrow to 1.2 million in the world. And if you're one of those managers right now that is ranked in the millions, do not panic. It's only 7 game weeks. So much can happen. In the season I finished 270th in the world, I was hovering around a million in this period of time. So there's plenty of time to catch up on those other FPL managers. So going into Game Week 8, 2 free transfers available, 0 in the bank, but importantly, still have the wildcard available. Yes, I am one of those managers that decided to keep it back till later on in the season. And to be honest with you, even though the rank doesn't look good, I'm actually really happy with the team. So being one of the managers that has a wildcard available each and every game week, the first question that I need to ask myself is, does this team need a wildcard? So just quickly running through the team. Henderson away against Nottingham Forest, not ideal at all, but again, goalkeepers, it takes a lot for me to really want to force a goalkeeper out of the team. In terms of the defenders, double Liverpool defence with Robertson and Trent at home against Chelsea, and of course, Liverpool right now being one of the better defences in the league. It was actually really unlucky the fact that Robertson ended up being in the bench in that Game Week 7 fixture where they kept the clean sheet killer in that situation, but I do expect him to return to the team at home against Chelsea. And even though Chelsea have been in great form this season, I still back this Liverpool team in the big game. So I'm not feeling that tempted to completely move away from the Liverpool defence. And also both of these offer attacking potential. Rico Lewis away against Wolves as well. Unless we get any inclination that he's going to be a rotation risk, more than happy to keep him going into Game Week 8 and then reassess later on when I look to wildcard. In terms of the midfield, Bukayo Saka is the one that we need to talk about. We will be doing that in the next section. But of course, yellow flags right now. It sounds positive from what we heard from the England manager. But of course, we're not going to get anything from Arteta. Unless we get reports that he is completely ruled out, I would assume that he is going to be fit and available for Arsenal, especially with that Odegaard injury still happening until around December. In terms of the rest of the midfield, Jota, Rodgers, Eze and Smith Rowe all look okay. A lot of people talking about Diogo Jota right now, but he is absolutely Liverpool's number 9. And up against a Chelsea defence that doesn't have Cucurella or Wes Fofana due to suspension, I actually think he's perfectly fine to hold for this particular game week. Rodgers and Smith Rowe, my budget-enabling midfielders, more than content to keep. And Eze is going to be the other one that definitely looks like it needs to be a sell. But really, the only direction that I'd want to go in is either a Spurs midfielder or Brian Mbeumo. But I still have faith in Eze right now. We will touch on him later on in the video on what exactly I plan on doing. Finally, the front two, Watkins and Haaland. Haaland, of course, going to be my captain regardless of the situation going into Game Week 8. But the big question mark is something that we're also going to focus on is Ollie Watkins away against Fulham. Is that a good fixture, or is it maybe time to move away from him to better forwards in the game? So we'll be touching on those particular players, Saka and Watkins. But in terms of my team, no, I do not think it requires a wildcard. I think it is absolutely fine going into this game week. And for those that are wondering when I plan on using my wildcard, right now, I actually think Game Week 12 is the week that I intend to use my wildcard. I think the fixture swings are good enough around that period that I can really double down on certain teams. And it also means over the upcoming game weeks, Liverpool assets and Arsenal assets, if I want to move away from them and maybe go a bit more differential on certain players, I could do that knowing that I can easily get back to them in Game Week 12. So let me know what you do with this team in the comment section. Let me know what you scored in Game Week 7. Now let's take a look at those specific players that I might be looking to transfer out. So the first big question is, what do we do with Bukayo Saka? I know he's the second most bought player going into Game Week 8. So of course, if you're one of those managers right now that has already brought him in, you just got to sit tight, keep him for game week 8 unless he gets completely ruled out. And that's the big thing right now with Bukayo Saka. We know that if he has one leg, he is going to play for Arsenal. That is the way that Arteta has always treated him, especially with the injury to Odegaard. I think it's going to take something significant for him not to feature away against Bournemouth. And then, of course, they have that really tricky run of fixtures afterwards that you can see here, home against Liverpool and then away against both Newcastle and Chelsea. So on one hand, you'd argue that maybe Saka can get rested in game week 8 in preparation for the other games. But on the other hand, Bournemouth away isn't an easy fixture, and I think Arteta is going to need Saka in that game. So basically, expect not to get any news on Saka. So you need to decide exactly what you want to do with him going into game week 8. Now, for me, I think, of course, if he is pass fit, I think he is a hold. The reason being is, with Saka's positioning in my team, he very much is the premium midfielder. And I don't really want to downgrade Saka to a cheap enabler like a Bryan Mbeumo, who is mid-price. He's somebody that is not in my team right now. But for this specific game week away against Man United, I actually think it's a perfectly good fixture, but not one that I need to force in my team, especially for those managers that are maybe looking at my team without Bryan Mbeumo. So I really want to make sure that the Saka spot in my team remains more of a premium asset. That means that the other players in my team, like Eze, could be the one that flips between those mid-price midfielders. So first and foremost, if Saka's pass fit, I'm absolutely keeping him in my team, because the other two players that I'm considering right now, Phil Foden and Cole Palmer, both offer their pros and cons. Take a look at the actual game week 8 fixture. Man City definitely have the more favourable game away against a Wolves team that defensively have been all over the place this season. Arsenal away against Bournemouth, the second best, and then of course Cole Palmer away against Liverpool. Even though Chelsea have been good, Cole Palmer's been fantastic. I really don't understand the desperation to bring Cole Palmer into our teams for game week 8. Yes, he could do well, but I just don't think it is worth ripping up the teams, especially if you're one of those managers like myself that has no money in the bank. Because as I've said here, for me, Cole Palmer requires 2 free transfers to bring into the team. It requires me upgrading Saka to Palmer, which then means me downgrading one of the other players in my team to free up the funds. And that absolutely could be done with the likes of Ollie Watkins coming down to some of the cheaper options I'm going to touch on in a minute. So it isn't really a problem getting to Cole Palmer, but I just don't really think he is the player that I want to bring in for game week 8, especially if we do think Saka will start. The other one at a cheaper price is going to be Phil Foden. Now again, we don't know exactly what we're getting with Phil Foden right now, because the Man City team is still a little bit unpredictable. They're still trying to adjust without Rodri in the team. Kevin De Bruyne still to come back into this side. Foden still trying to find his space, whether it's in the central areas or off the right. But with the wingers that they do have available now, Savio on the right, we have Doku and we have Grealish, I do think Foden will still operate as that second forward or in the number 10 role. And at 9.2 million, he is an unbelievable option. And if you want to jump on early, I really think this is a good game week. Wolves away is great. Then Southampton, followed by 2 away games against Bournemouth and Brighton. Of course, after game week 11, that is when I plan on using my wildcard. So I'm not really looking beyond that point. So to conclude, if Saka's pass fit or he looks like he's going to be available, I think I will keep him for game week 8. I love Foden as a pick this week, but I just don't think I need to force it. And Cole Palmer for me just isn't the right entry point in game week 8. I'd prefer to have Saka in my team. But of course, if we get some sort of journalist report that Saka is going to be out, I actually think I'd rather maybe take the punt on Phil Foden going into game weeks 8 and 9, just because I'm one of those managers that does have the wildcard available, and I know I can easily move away from that situation if it does come a bit stale. And this is the time to jump on Foden if it is with game week 8 in mind. So if Saka's out, I think I'll go Foden. If he's not, I will keep him for this game week. Now, another big debate for a lot of managers out there, including myself, is going to be what to do with Ollie Watkins. Now, at 9.1 million, he's actually been great value once again this season. 2 double-digit returns, and we know in the opening few game weeks, he could have had monster returns again if it wasn't for a mixture of great goalkeeping and poor finishing. So he could have been even better off this season. But going into the next few game weeks, we can see with Aston Villa's fixtures here, they are a little bit hit and miss. Fulham away, I think now is actually a tough fixture. I think Fulham always at home at Craven Cottage. I don't think we can look at that fixture and think that is guaranteed goals and a result for Aston Villa at all. Bournemouth at home in game week 9, I feel more confident about that fixture. But then Spurs away in game week 10, we know Spurs are open. They will give Aston Villa chances, but it's not the best fixture in the world. And then Liverpool away in game week 11. So I do think there is an argument maybe to take a look at Watkins and say to ourselves, is it time to sell him going into game week 8, especially with some other options available that we can get to. Now, again, similar to the situation with Saka, I could come down to some of the cheaper forwards available, like a Chris Wood, like a Calvert-Lewin, but because of the structure of my team, I don't really want to be sacrificing Watkins all the way down to that price point, especially when I already have one of those players in Muniz. So I want to keep this forward spot in the mid-priced area, which includes the likes of Solanke and Havertz, which are going to be the two replacements, if I am to go there, to go for in game week 8. So firstly, take a look at the fixtures and the numbers that we're getting in the opening 7 game weeks. Watkins still is the man in terms of XG per 90, 0.88, compared to Havertz's 0.75 and Solanke's 0.74. So Watkins is still the forward to get in terms of underlying numbers. He's good in big chances and he's decent on bonus points as well. Havertz, though, has been a bit of a revelation in this Arsenal team. Really good numbers, again, not on penalties, which is something that we do need to factor. I think of this 3, maybe only Solanke is the one that is on penalties while Son is out in that Spurs team. There are a few arguments, maybe Tielemans will be the penalty taker in that Aston Villa team. But Havertz's numbers are fantastic. The big thing about Arsenal is it really the time to go get Havertz? Bournemouth away, followed by Liverpool at home, Newcastle away, and Chelsea away. Now, for me, I actually think Kai Havertz is a little bit fixture-proof. I think Arsenal can get a result in every single one of these games. And the way that Havertz is playing this season and being the focal point in the team, if Arsenal are going to get results over this period, I think Havertz is going to get returns over this period. The problem is, I don't see a high ceiling for him. I could see him picking up a couple of goals or assists over this period, but is that really worth me selling Watkins to Havertz, where I think the Bournemouth fixture in itself is better than any fixture that Havertz has over this period? I think the answer is going to be no. So because of the fixtures, even though I back Arsenal, I can't really justify doing Watkins to Havertz in game week 8. So the debate for me is whether I bring in Dominic Solanke. Now, of course, the minutes are less than that of Watkins, so we need to look at Solanke's numbers with a little bit of a skew, but they've been good. He's picked up big chances, 1.61. I think he was a little bit disappointed in game week 7, but I think the team didn't really bring him into the game rather than Solanke at his own accord. And a 7.6 million is going to free up a lot of funds in my team to go elsewhere if I need to, especially in game week 9 and 10. And take a look at the fixtures. There's no denying that the fixtures are better for Spurs than that of Aston Villa. West Ham at home in game week 8, very much a Jekyll and Hyde team, but when Spurs are at home, I always fancy them for goals. Palace away looks good right now. Then Villa at home. I think Villa on their travels are actually quite poor. I think Spurs will score a few goals against them. And then what we'd argue is the money fixture in game week 11 at home against Ipswich. So right now, in particular for game week 8, I don't think it is a guaranteed transfer that needs to happen, Watkins to Dominic Solanke. I don't think there is much difference between the two. And then you'd argue game week 9, the fixture is actually better for that of Ollie Watkins. So as of right now, I do think Dominic Solanke is the better pick over a 4 game week period. But for the next 2 game weeks, if I don't need the funds elsewhere, I actually think Watkins keeping for the next 2 and then moving to Solanke in game week 10 is actually the plan for me right now. However, if we get some information that maybe there is some tired legs somewhere in the team, or maybe I just need to get myself Spurs, I think Solanke is the route that I will go for right now. But I don't think it is desperate for my team unless I need the funds available. So taking a look at my game week 8 transfer plans off the back of what we have spoken about, and as I mentioned, I think my team is absolutely fine for this specific game week. Now, of course, the first thing that we'll be asking ourselves is, double Liverpool defence, is that really what you want to have at home against Chelsea? But when we take a look at game week 8 in isolation with those specific fixtures, I need to look at the games and say, is there any games that I really think are going to be guaranteed clean sheets? Now, Man City away against Wolves, yes, but we've seen Man City be so sloppy at the back. I don't really think I want to be doing a Liverpool defender to a Vardiel, which then blocks me off of a potential Foden pick in midfield. And then looking at the rest of them, yes, Nottingham Forest could be okay at home against Crystal Palace, but do I feel that compelled to bring in a Nottingham Forest defender this week? Not really. So even though double Liverpool isn't ideal, I also don't think there are a ton of clean sheets to be had this week. Yes, Arsenal away against Bournemouth I think is good, But then after that, do I want a piece of Arsenal with game week 9 to 11 looking so difficult? The answer is going to be no. So I'm going to back on the Liverpool clean sheet and also the potential of attacking returns if they do have that clean sheet wiped out. Lewis, absolutely fine. And it's worth noting, coming into this game week, I actually do have a play-in sub in the shape of Robinson, who again, if he has to come into this team, is absolutely fine. Now, this team's direction is going to be completely about Bukayo Saka because, as I mentioned, if he's pass fit, he stays in my team. The alternatives in Foden and Palmer are great, but I also prefer to have Saka for the away game against Bournemouth and then maybe look to move him out in game week 9. Jota I'm absolutely fine with at home against Chelsea, and we spoke about Rodgers and Smith Rowe being brilliant options, still more than happy to keep them in the team. I know a lot of people are talking about Eze right now. Why the hell have you got him in your teams? And I do absolutely agree. He has been a frustrating player this season. But with the fixtures coming up, Forest away, yes, I do think it's difficult. But Spurs at home, I think it's okay. Wolves, followed by Fulham at home. I actually think the fixtures are okay in that period before I do wildcard. And yes, I would love to bring in someone like a Brian Mbeumo, but away against Man United in game week 8, even though Man United are so poor, I don't really think it is a desperate transfer for my team. And of course, I need to free up funds to do Eze to Mbeumo rather than the other way around. So for that reason, I think it's difficult for me to get rid of Eze this week, unless I look to bring in someone like a Brennan Johnson into my team, which is a consideration. It is worth noting. Now, of course, the final piece here is what to do with Ollie Watkins. We've spoken about it. One of the moves I absolutely could do is selling Ollie Watkins to Dominic Solanke, freeing up the funds to then go into game week 9 and allow myself to pivot. But do I really think Dominic Solanke is much better than Watkins this week? The answer is probably no. So if we get all the information that Saka's fit, I'm most likely going to roll my transfer going into game week 9 when options then become a little bit more limited. I will have 3 free transfers available and 0 in the bank. And I think the first thing that we need to address in this team is solving the defensive problem. So what I can do is get rid of a Robertson, for example, and bring in a team that maybe have more favourable fixtures over this period. I could even jump on someone like a Wolves and maybe bring in someone like a Rayan Aït-Nouri to come in for a game away against Brighton, which isn't ideal, but that then does free up a bit more funds in the team to then improve it. So for example, Robinson can come in for game week 9, and then we can look to address the Diogo Jota situation, which I wouldn't like to keep him long-term in my team. And this is when, most likely, a certain Brian Mbeumo will come back into my team for Ipswich at home. And then I look at that team and think that is absolutely fine for game week 9, 1.5 million in the bank and 1 free transfer still available. Who do I really miss in this game week? Well, yes, I am missing potentially a Man City midfielder that I absolutely could bring in for Bukayo Saka with that additional free transfer in my team. And all of a sudden, using 3 of my free transfers, just by not using it in game week 8, I think the team looks fantastic for game week 9 then. So 3 free transfers could be made. I could make the Aït-Nouri move down from Robertson. I could make the Saka to Foden move in game week 9. And I could then look to pivot away from Diogo Jota to Brian Mbeumo while still keeping Ollie Watkins in my team for the next 2 game weeks. Then coming into game week 10 is the week where most likely I could look to move away from Ollie Watkins and bring in somebody like a Dominic Solanke if I want a piece of that Spurs attack. But that is the current transfer plans for the team. I'm really happy with my team going into game week 8. No wildcard. The big question is, do we sell Saka if he is not fit? Yes, guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's updated transfer plans video. I really hope it's provided some value. And of course, FPL is finally back. So we are back in the daily videos world. So make sure if you're not already, you are subscribed to the channel, as we're going to be releasing a wildcard video tomorrow. And then we're going to be doing our Wednesday video of buy and avoid for specific players in your teams. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Make sure you drop a like, put your questions in the comment section. I'll get back to them, and have an amazing day. Take care. Cheers.